So basically, we created the UI application and we saw the demo. The only thing is that on that we are not able to see that submit button. So I fixed that. So basically, as part of that, as I mentioned, that process modeling, the change request configuration, I actually missed one setting. So that's where that submit button is not coming up. So anyway, that we had to discuss on that process modeling configurations. But just to see the demo, from with respect to that UI point of view. So I'll just quickly show you and then we can go to the extensions part.
What's the problem? What setting is missed?
Yeah, that is basically at the change request type configuration. That anyway, I'll explain when we are talking about that process modeling, what is the impact as well. So, but since you asked this question, so basically under I created one change request type to process our master data. So that CR type is basically, what is the CR type I created? It's a ZP01 is the change request type I created, okay, to create our master data. So just like how for the material, when I'm trying to create a material mat, L01 is the CR type that is being used. Now this should use this CR type I'm using. Now here what I have done is basically I didn't select this single object checkbox. So when you don't usually this is for single object, whatever the UI application that we created. So this particular UI application is for single object. Okay, that means one record I wanted we can create using that CR type. So I didn't select this. So that means it will be system assumes that this is for the mass processing. And since here I'm using it for a CR single object, so that's why I didn't get that submit button. So as soon as I selected this checkbox, so because this is for the single object creation, I see this submit button. Okay, but anyway, for all others, during that CR type configuration process modeling, we will discuss in detail about that each and every setting. Is that fine?
Yeah. That means it's not unable to identify the single or mass. So due to that,
Yeah. That's why you don't see that submit, because until you don't see the submit, you cannot submit your request, right? So that means basically it is as good as not allowing you to create a single object. Okay, fine. So now let's see, because even that say these things are not working, right? So we'll try to create one request. So there's some material. Let's say, for example, I'm just creating one material here. So I'll also extend this material to plants. I'm choosing some plant here. Okay, fine. So I just created one material and extended to this material to two plants. Now let's submit this request. So now this request has been submitted. Okay. So now let me just check. Okay. So I configured one workflow along with this particular request when I'm doing that process modeling configuration. Also, I configured the workflow for this one. Okay. So how the workflow look like is basically, this is just for your visualization, how the MDG workflow look like. Okay. Or works. So this is something like this. So requester. So now as a requester, I entered the data and click on the submit button. Okay. Now this particular workflow which I configured for this scenario is two-step approval process. So two-step means first it goes to approver one, okay? And approver one approver one has the option to either approve that request or reject that request. Okay. So if approver one approves this request, again it goes to approver two. And at approver two also, if approver two approves this request, okay. So finally, there is a process called activation process, and that activation, it initiates the activation process. If the activation is successful, the workflow will be completed. At approver one and approver two level, we are providing an option to basically if they can reject that request at any of this level. So it goes to again back to the requester only. Okay. So in case of activation failure, it goes to this again previous approval. So this we will discuss in detail about these workflows in the process modeling topic itself. Okay. But if you notice this, so as a requester, now I submitted the request at this level. Okay. With my user, that is some MDG00 user. Okay. Now again it went to approver one. Now what I have done is at approver one level as well, I assigned myself as at this level as well to approve that request. Okay. So that it comes to me only again to approve this request. Again, at approver 2 also I assign my name. So at all these three levels, I assign my name. So myself, I'm acting as a requester, approver 1 and approver 2. Okay. So activation is the something like background process that will initiate in the backend, and finally the request will get closed. So now what I have done is here, once I submit that request, so as soon as I submit that request, and when I click on refresh button, because my name is there as an at a approver 1 level here, at the approver 1 level, this request came to me again as a approver. Okay, because that's why I see in the down two buttons. Okay, so here finalize processing. Always in MDG workflows, you'll have two options over here. One option is to move forward. Other option is to reject that request. So the description can be different, so that you can take which description you wanted to display. Okay, but here finalize processing. Okay, that means it is as good as approving that request. So here instead of approve, so the standard of this workflow has displays the text as finalize processing. Finalize processing, which indicates review the data and finalize, confirm, or say okay from your side. Send for revision means it is as good as rejecting. Okay, so that's why now it came to me and it is waiting for my decision to take a call. So if I click on finalize processing, again that means approver, it will move from approver 1 to approver 2. There again you will have different buttons like activate, reject, something like that. Okay, but now since as this, it came to me as soon as the requester submitted that request, which means the data might have already inserted in your staging table. Now let's look at in the staging table, MDG underscore data underscore model. Okay, so the data model is ZP. Okay, so let's look at first your type 1 table. Okay, here see, this is the material pump 1. So pump 1 is our material, and the status shows it as USMD active status as 0, which indicates it's an inactive record. So once all these in this, as per this diagram, all the approvals are done, finally activation was successful, then activation success means that is the process where it actually turns from inactive to active record. Okay, so till then it will be status is showing as 0 only, and this is all other data that we entered. Okay, so now when I go to the plant table, okay, here how many records we are expecting? How many records we are expecting at the plant level?
2 records.
Yeah. So there should be 2 plants because we extended the material to 2 plants. See, 10, 10, 10, 20. Material number is same. Okay. So, and here also the record is inactive. Now what I will do is I will actually approve this request. Okay. So this is a request. I'll say finalize processing. Then it should go to approver 2. That means as per this diagram, it should go to approver 2, and at approver 2, if I do a refresh, see it came to the approver 2. Now at approver 2, there are two options we are showing, approve and reject. There is a workflow log as well. You can see in the workflow log. Okay. So the approver 1 already completed his activity, and the decision, the button that he clicked is finalize processing. The action he took is finalize processing. Now it is pending with again with the my user only as a approver 2, and it is ready. Okay. So now what I will do is I'll actually approve this request. Now once this is done, it goes to the next step is activation step. Activation step is not a user interaction step. It will run in the background. It will initiate this activation process in the background. And if that activation is successful, the workflow will be completed. Okay. So if I do a refresh, okay. So this is processing. Okay. So now it's already processed. So let's do a refresh at your plant level table. See, your inactive record turn into active because it's a flex mode. In case of flex mode, your data will be there in the same staging table as an active record. It's not creating a new set of records. The same inactive record turn into active record. Similarly, go to that plant material table. So this is also become active. Now this is an active record. This is how similarly your finance objects also works. Okay. And earlier we saw the demo for material master where you saw the entry in the staging table, and after all the approvers activation process, we saw that the staging table record got deleted and moved into Mara table. That demo also we saw. Okay. So ultimately this is how your UI look like. And okay, we will discuss in detail about the process modeling workflows and everything, but you can visualize how the MDG workflows look like. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so if no questions, So let me first open material UI application because we are talking about the enhancements for the standard UI applications. So I'll open this material UI application and we'll continue our discussion there.
So my question here is like, as we are using Flex, the data from the staging table should be removed, right? Once it is active. Is it
No,
because
in case of reuse, it will remove from here and move it to application table. But in case of flex mode, the record will be there in the same staging table only. Okay. So let me show you the diagram. Okay. So now if you see, in case of reuse mode, where the after activation process, the data will move from your staging to active area. In case of flex, it will be there in the same staging table only. It won't move to your application table. This is a single table only. Okay, this diagram misleads. So this is a single table, staging table only.
okay? So now our custom model is Flex only.
Yeah, our custom model is flex data model. Because why
Okay.
we didn't create a reuse? Because if any data model to make it as a reuse data model, that access class of the development, it's a very big effort, right? So that's why, because we just wanted to see the data model concept. So that's why I didn't create it as a reuse. I just
Okay.
created it as a flex model.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
Normally for
yeah.
Flux mode, so without replication framework, so how it
Hmm.
will the data will transfer? It will not, right?
No, it won't transfer to
Okay,
application
only
tables.
yeah, it's only be there in staging table, right?
Exactly. Yes, yes.
Okay.
So I'll show you. We'll going forward when we are working with the standard one data models as well, because we have one data model extension topic. So during that time, I'll show you. I will try to create one cost center GL account, and I'll show you that how it works there. Okay. But for flex mode, whatever the demo I showed you, the same applies for cost center GL account everywhere. So initially the data will be there with zero indicator. After all the workflows, it will convert into active record. So it won't move anywhere. That active record will be always there in the staging. Even if you replicate, configure an additional replication to the same system to your application tables, so you will have two set of records. One active record will be there in your staging, another active record will be there in your application table. Any confusion here?
Now it
No,
is
no,
clear.
no.
Clear, right? Okay, okay, correct. So now another, so we discussed about the personalization. Okay, it's a not a like a MDG person has to do. This is a business users, they can actually make use of this personalization setting. But sometimes if some issues comes in the due to the personalization, if they by mistakenly they hidden something or they made some values as default, and then you can actually guide them if they see any issues over there. That's the only thing I just captured over here as part of the UI personalization as well. Okay. But the actual enhancements that we do with respect to the standard UI applications is, so the most important options here are, this is the one, and this is two, and this is three. Okay. And of course, there is one more, four and five. So these are the common, these five options we should learn in detail. Okay. So it's nothing complex. It's a very simple and straightforward, but let's understand. So let's look at the customizing option. What is this customizing option? Okay. So now you have this UI application. Okay. So now your requirement is on this basic data UIBB. Okay. So you enhanced this entity in data model with some custom attribute. Okay. So there are two things that comes in your enhancement part. Okay. When it comes to your data model enhancements. Okay. So one is, let's take example of data model. So you already have one SU type one, that is nothing but your material name of that entity. Okay. Under this entity, you already have some standard attributes like material number, material type, industry sector. Likewise, you have bunch of attributes. So one enhancement that expect could be, maybe you might be adding some Z attribute over here. So this scenario is enhancing that standard entity with custom attribute. The other option could be, you might be adding a new brand new type 4, ZSU type 4, some Z country, something like that. Okay. So this is a entity enhancing your data data model with a custom entity. This is enhancing a data model with a custom attribute in the standard entity. So these are the two use cases. Okay. So we will discuss how to do and all this stuff when in the data model enhancement. Now here, based on this one, ultimately the impact on the UI is Basically, if you are enhancing, adding a new attribute under a standard entity, that means basically the same attribute you might need to add somewhere in this entity UIBB. You need to identify what is the corresponding UIBB. There you need to add that attribute under that UIBB. The other option is if you are adding a brand new Z entity, you need to add a new UIBB itself here. Okay. So in both the cases, you need to modify or enhance this UI application. Okay. So for that one, there are two options are there. Option one is customizing. Okay. So now let me show you how to do the customizing. So always, as I mentioned, right click on your UI application, go to technical help. Okay. You see this application configuration. This is the application configuration. Okay. Now here, the design part of your UI application is under this component configuration, the second one. Click on this. Okay. So now you are into the fluid editor where you can design. So here to add an UIBB, you need to click on this plus button. Okay. But this is grayed out because this is the standard one. Okay. Again, when you click on this edit button, ideally we are not supposed to do that one. Don't click on edit and add UIBB because that is not the right approach. Or else the other option could be you can, let's say, for example, select a particular UIBB, select a UIBB. You wanted to add an attribute. You wanted to modify one of the existing data on the UI. Maybe you wanted to rename the fields or something like that, right? Then you can select this particular UIBB, click on configure UIBB. Okay. So here also, okay. So this is your, hide this. So this is your UIBB with all the attributes. Okay. Now, your requirement is maybe you wanted to rename this field or add a new field. Add a new field means basically what happens is once you extend your data model on the left hand side, you see your Z attribute. So you need to drag and drop. Okay. But here for currently you are in read only mode and we wanted to enhance this UIBB. So for that one, the first option is customizing. So there is you can see here other functions. There you have something called create customizing. There is an option called enhance as well. So we will discuss both options. Both are to enhance your UI application only. Okay. But what is the difference? I'll explain. First, let's understand these two things. Okay. So first look at create customizing. So when I click on this create customizing, it will open up. Okay. So this error says that there is no customizing does not exist till now. Yes, we are creating first time. Okay. So you can always click on create button here, provide some description, click on OK. It asks for the transport so that you can move these changes to your subsequent systems. So saving under that existing transport only. Click on OK. Okay. Now here you are entered into customizing mode. Okay. And how do you know? In the top, you can see there is an horizontal orange color bar is there. Okay. So, and it shows that in a customizing mode. That means this UIBB you opened up in a customizing mode. Okay. Earlier, this is the previous one, which in display mode. This is not, you are not in a customizing mode. But from here, other function, if I try to click on create customizing, that's how it opened up another window where this UIBB in a customizing mode. Okay. And now everything is an editable. Okay. So let's say, for example, material is there. Okay. Now you can see this material field properties, it is coming up. Okay. Now you wanted to rename this one. Instead of material, I want product. Enter. Okay. So this will change to product. So likewise, you can change the settings of any of these existing attributes. Or for example, some attributes you don't want. You can select that attribute and delete that attribute. There is an option where you can delete as well. So even if you delete, so ultimately this version, whatever in the customizing mode, whatever the version that you are seeing, right, you can do any changes here. Okay. So let me tell you here one thing. So what happens is this is your base configuration. Base configuration means the original configuration. Okay. Now, when I create a customizing and open this in a customizing, system creates another copy of the same base configuration. So copy of the base configuration. Okay. Now on this base configuration, let's say here I have 100 attributes. Now I can add either more attributes or I can delete attributes. So you can play around with on this copied version. Nothing will impact to your base configuration. So this will contain the changes that you made as part of your the customizing. Okay. Now later you have an option. Let's say, for example, you did all the changes. Okay. Now you don't want all these changes. You wanted to reset it to original. Just simply delete this customizing. I'll show you how to delete. Okay. So that means basically when you are doing the changes in a customizing mode, what happens is your changes can be retrieved in the sense you have an option to reset. Okay. So otherwise, let's say, for example, on this original configuration itself, if you go to edit mode and if you try to do the changes and you cannot reset back to original because you are changing the original one. It is as good as like you have an ABAP program and you wanted to do some enhancements. You create copy of the program and do all the changes, delete, add everything. But your original program remain untouched. In future, you don't want all the changes, just simply delete your copied program. But your original program will be still there as a reference. So that's why we are not touching this one. But as part of the customizing, we are actually created a customizing and where it shows that you are in a customizing mode, you can do all the changes. What are the changes that you wanted to do? Add attributes, delete attributes and everything. Okay. So this is about customizing. It's very simple. Okay. Now I just created this customizing, right? Let me save the changes. So I did my changes. Okay. Now here it shows that the label as product, not the material. Okay. So let me close this window after customizing. Now I'll close everything. Let's do a refresh and try to create a new material. Now you see the label as product, not material. Okay. This is fine. Now again, I'll go back. I'll go to that edit mode, right click, application configuration, component configuration, expand your basic data, go to configure UMB. Okay. See, you see here in the warning message, it says customizing exists, but this is a base configuration that you are seeing. That's why it is showing the label as material only. Okay. Don't get confused. Okay. Hey, here it is showing product, but here it is showing material because the one that is it is showing is the customizing one, but here it is showing the original basic one, base configuration. Now to see that one, you can always go again this one, other functions, and earlier you got that create customizing. Now you have an option to see the edit customizing and delete customizing. Okay. So if you click on edit customizing, it will open up that the existing customizing with the changes that you have done. See here it shows product.
So if
Okay.
I want to make any of the field an asterisk tick mark, so how we will do?
So again, yeah. Now you can see here, there are multiple ways to actually to make some fields as mandatory. We use this option 5. Okay, baddie. There is a baddie. In the baddie, we make it as a mandatory, that asterisk thing. But here, do you have that option? Let's see on the attribute section. I select, let's say, for example, any other field authorization.
Yeah, old material authorization. Yeah.
Input prompt is there. Is label visible? This is about the label. Is it mandatory? Usually we don't do that here. This customizing we use to rename the fields or adding the fields or hiding the fields like that. But making it as a mandatory, we use the other options, not this one. Okay. I don't see any option over here. But if there is something we can explore here itself, the property should be there, whether it's a mandatory.
Can you please check
not.
for product the material how it will be there? That will be an
That is
asterisk
a key field, right? So by default it comes. So for the standard ones, these asterisks, these are coming from your backend SPRO configuration. Okay. So there are two things like from SPRO configuration, because these are mandatory even in your MM01 when you are creating material using MM01 as well. Okay. So that is coming from SPRO configuration. Okay. Now on top of that one at MDG level also you have different ways that where you can make it mandatory, that we will see going forward. But at this level, I don't see that option here to make it mandatory. Okay. We'll discuss that because there are multiple options out there where you can make it mandatory. We'll discuss that. Fine. So this is about customizing. Okay. Now let's say I'll close this one, go to this, the original base configuration. I'll go back to the main configuration. Now here I wanted to add a new UIV. Okay. So here also you have an option to create a customizing. Okay. So when you create a customizing here at this level, this everything will get enabled to add your new UIBBs and everything, new UIBBs, new wirings and everything. Okay, so customizing can be done at this main page level where you can add UIBBs or go to the individual UIBB, and there also you can create a customizing for that UIBB. So if you are doing here, the customizing is for the entire application. And if you are doing the customizing at an individual UIBB level, that is applicable for that UIBB. So why we use customizing? Basically, using the customizing, you can play around with some add new attributes or new UIBBs, or else rename the fields, change some, hide some fields, or probably some settings, whatever that attribute setting, right? On the right hand side, all those things you can play around with that one. Any questions on this?
No.
Okay. So if this is how you can enhance your standard UI applications, the same concept applicable for your BP, finance, and all the objects, because everything is ultimately it's an FPM. There also you open the UI, go to the technical help. From there, you can identify your UIBB and create a customizing. Everything remains same. Okay. Now the next option is, I'll come back to this client specific and system wide. Let me first explain enhancement as well. Then we discuss both together. Okay. So now there's an option called enhancement as well. The purpose is the same. Okay. So
Hey, you know, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features: bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
you can go to your individual UIBB, configure UIBB. Okay, so customizing exists, let it be there. So you can also create enhancement. Create enhancement. It asks for that enhancement implementation. The ENH underscore demo one. Okay, I'm just creating one enhancement here. Okay, so now it created enhancement. Okay, so now how do you know you are in enhancement? There is no orange color box. Customizing, in case of customizing only, you see the horizontal or in that yellow color bar. But now you can see in the top left corner, you are in an enhancement mode. Enhancement ZENH underscore demo one. Now here also I can play around with the properties. Okay, so in fact, you can change your feeder class as well. Click on feeder class, and this is in editable. You can create some Z feeder class and attach over here. Okay, or else you select some attribute over here. Let's say authorization, and the same whatever the fields that it shows earlier. So everything you can again do, add new attributes, change these properties, hide these attributes. So change the feeder class. Okay, everything. So whatever you do from the customizing and through enhancement also you can do at individual UIBB level or at the overall OVP application level. So the concept, purpose, everything remains same for enhancement and customizing. Okay, I just created this enhancement. Let me save it. I'm not doing any changes. This enhancement is there. Okay, fine. Now first let's understand what is this client specific for all users, client and system wide for all users. Okay, so in SAP, yeah, please.
If there is no difference between customizing and enhancement, so which option should we
Why
choose?
these two options? Yeah, exactly. So that's I'll explain. That's the reason I explained about customizing and enhancement. Now we'll come to that point. Okay. So
Okay.
before getting into that point, first I want you to understand what is this client specific. Okay. Any guess between these two, if you with respect to this client specific and system wide by
Client
looking at
specific
this.
is client specific is a mandate field, like it is the data is
Okay, so
we have to do SCC one for the customizing.
what is that purpose? What is that
More from
basically the client specific? Even if you log into SAP, right, it asks for the along with the user credentials, you'll also have that a client.
just to differentiate, like one is for standard, like customizing pro configs and all we do.
Exactly. Okay, so what happens is you have your SAP system. In your SAP system, in the backend, you have all the application tables and everything. Okay. Now, assume that this is client 100 and this is 200. Client 200. Now, there are certain your ABAP programs and everything. I do some changes in ABAP program, right? So if I open that ABAP program in client 100 or client 200, I'll see the same ABAP program. But there are certain configurations which are client specific. That means, yeah, as you rightly mentioned, we have something called SPRO configurations. Okay. So you do some SPRO configuration in 200 client. Okay. And this under some transport. Okay. Now, if you go to client 100 and you see the same, you cannot see that same configuration. Maybe you created a material type here. That material type won't be available here automatically. Okay. You need to do that SCC1 to import the transport so that configuration will be moved into this one as well. Okay. So that is basically that why it is happening, because the configuration is client specific. So in general, in the project systems, we will have these two separate clients, one client for your configurations, and you keep that, consider it as your golden copy for your configurations, and the other client where you do all the ABAP programs for your testing purpose and all that stuff. Okay. So in this case, whatever the configurations you do in 200, you move into 100 so that the same configuration exists, also get reflected or sync over here. Okay. But when it comes to the ABAP programs or any technical objects, right, that is not the case. You no need to do it. You do your changes either 200 or 100, that will reflect across all the clients, because that is a system level. Okay. Now, in this customizing, what it says is client specific. Okay. Customizing is client specific, which means the same, you created one customizing in this client, for example, and when you ask someone to test that in 100 client, they cannot see that customizing because it's a client specific. So what you need to do, you need to import the transport, then only they can test the changes. Otherwise, it won't reflect over here. That is what that means. Whenever you are doing a customizing, it's a client specific. So if you have a single client in your entire project, right, in the system, single client, there is nothing. Whether it's a client specific or not, you have a single client, we don't care because it's a single client. But whereas when you have multiple clients and if you're doing the configuration customizing in one client, then you need to sync it to other client explicitly. Otherwise, it won't reflect there. If someone open and see that change, they cannot see the changes. Whereas enhancement, it's a system wide, just like your ABAP programs. That's why it says system wide for all users. So I do the enhancement either here or here. It will reflect in the all other clients because it's a system level, just like your ABAP programs. That is one difference. Okay.
But here for the UI level, what does it make difference, like customizing and enhance? Because it's not kind of a data, right? But the UI should look like.
Yeah. So assume that I did this customizing, okay, in one client. Okay. Now, because in the same client I logged in, I see this value as a product. But if I log into this system with in the other client, maybe this is 100, right? Assume that there is a 200 client. I log into 200 client. And again, I'll try to open the same UI application. There I will see material, not the product. Assume that your client, when you have multiple clients, each client acts as a one system for you. Like you do your developments without moving your developments to your test system. Can you test over there? Do you see your changes there? No, right? You have to move the transport into other system. Then only you can all the changes, the developments you have done, that gets reflected over there. So in the same way here also, if you do your customizing in one client, just like your SPRO configuration from MDG point of view, also on the FPM customizing, if you do in one client, it won't automatically reflect on the other client in the same system. You have to explicitly import the transport there. Okay. Is that clear?
Yes, we understood the concept between customizing and enhance feature, but how it is applicable for the UI level?
Applicable to
UI level, because generally we do it for data, right? Any of the data. Okay, we can compare it like with the script. Okay.
Okay, so it's like what you are saying is usually you do it is in case of SPRO configurations, right? So how it will impact, because the same thing, just like treat this customizing also your SPRO configuration only kind of thing, customizing configuration.
Yeah. We can compare it with script also.
Is there any impact on the upgradation time? Which one is the better option for enhancement is customization?
Yeah, I'm coming to that one. Now, if you understand this difference, what is this client specific and this one? Why I explicitly added this here? Because again, if you have a single client in your development system, one client, and testing system, one client, and production, one client, there is no issue. It doesn't make any difference. But usually what happens is in the development system, we will have two clients sometimes in some customers. So one client, they use it for all the configurations. So even if you do your customizing in the same, like just like, let me show you here. So if you do your customizing in this, okay, and you are using you performing your unit testing in this client, then you cannot test the changes until you move over here, right? But if you do the customizing here itself, and you can test it here because it's in the same client, but that customizing get reflected in the other client. Now it's up to you whether you need the customizing here or not. You can do the customizing in 100 and move it to next system. Test it, you add, and move it to in your development system unit testing and move it to your SIT. Okay, but that when you are doing the customizing and if there are multiple clients are there, you need to take care of this. You need to keep in mind. Whereas enhancement, you do in any client that will reflect all the clients in the same system. Okay, that is from the client specific point of view. Okay, now coming back to the actual why we SAP provided two options when the purpose is same. Okay, which option I need to choose, right? And when we go for upgrades, what is the best approach and all that stuff. Okay, so now here, let's take one scenario. There are two teams are there. Okay, so first let me show you here one thing. So this is an enhancement mode. I'll close this. We already created one customizing for this particular basic data UIBB. One customizing we already created. Okay, so I'll go to, so remember that it shows that customizing already exists. There is one active enhancement also there. Okay, now if I go to other functions, can I create another customizing here? Do you see an option to create a customizing here?
No, only edit we can say.
No, right? No. Which means you can edit the existing customizing or you can delete the customizing. That means, what does that mean? You can create one customizing at any point of time. You can have one customizing. If someone is already created one customizing, you cannot create another customizing, and you can actually use the customizing created by other person and do your changes there. Okay. Whereas when it comes to enhancement, already there is one enhancement. Now, when I click on this, what it says, already there is one custom enhancement is there. You wanted to select that enhancement and go, or else you wanted to create another enhancement, which means for the same UIBB, I can create n number of enhancements, but I can create only one customizing at any point of time. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Clear. Now, based on this understanding, you tell me, how is there any benefit having multiple enhancements versus single customizing?
Enhancements multiple means user can have their own enhancement, right?
Sorry, can you come again?
When we create multiple enhancements, multiple changes can be there in multiple enhancements. Like enhancement 1 can have one UIBB changes, enhancement 2 can have other UIBB changes, kind of.
No, customizing also at an object level I'm talking. Okay, so what I mean by object level is you have one UIBB. This is UIBB 1. This is UIBB 2. Okay. Now, for this UIBB, I can create one customizing only, but I can create here n number of enhancements. Similarly, for this UIBB also, you can create one customizing and n number of enhancements. So now let's focus on a single UIBB. In a single UIBB, you have an option to create one customizing and n enhancements. Okay. How does this help to us? Is there any benefit you see having n enhancements versus no benefit, and one customizing also is fine for us? I just want you guys to think through so that
maybe n enhancements might be difficult in case of upgrade, like multiple things to be handled. No? So each enhancement to be adjusted.
Okay. Actually, both from when it comes to the upgrade activity and everything, both your customizing and enhancement both will be there. So there won't be any issue with enhancements and customizing. Okay.
Can multiple users have multiple enhancements in the same UIVB at the same time?
Sorry?
I'm asking like, can multiple users have multiple enhancements in the same?
Yes. I can, under the same UIVB, I can create one enhancement and you can create another enhancement for the same UIVB. Okay. Sure, no problem. I think now you are searching for what I am some answer, right? So let me explain. You will have better understanding now. Let's say, for example, this is your UIBB. Okay. So under this UIBB, you have attribute 1, attribute 2 from the standard. Okay. Now there are two teams are working. Team, okay, for the same material master. Okay. So in some of the bigger organizations, for the same material master, there might be multiple teams working, like depends on their service lines. So let's say this team A is handling all the supply chain related requirements. Okay. Because their business model is different and their business material types. So these supply chain processes uses some set of material types. And you also have another team B. Okay. They are leading maybe some retail materials, some retail. Okay. So both businesses or service lines are completely different. Okay. Though it's a MDG material master, but sometimes depends on the service lines and depends on the business lines. You can see in the bigger organizations, different teams. You take example of PepsiCo. In PepsiCo, there are the under MDG material master, there are 5-6 teams are there. One deal with the liquid drinks, another will deal with some other food items, and another team will deal with something else under the same material master. Now, ultimately, whoever the team works, if they wanted to create a material, they have to come to the same material, same data model, same UI application. Now, with having said that, team A working on a project. Okay. So they wanted, as part of their project, they wanted to add some custom attributes. So Z1 and Z2. Okay. So what they have done is they created this customizing. They created a customizing. Okay. Customizing one. Under this particular customizing, they added these two attributes and their delivery timelines are, let's say, for example, 31st December. Okay. Now team B also working on another project where they wanted to add some other set of custom attributes Y1 and Y2 for their material types. Okay. Now when they see that UI already, they cannot see create customizing option. Why? Because it's already created by this team. Now assume that if they use that edit, they can still go ahead and edit that customizing. They cannot delete the customizing because if they delete the existing customizing, team A changes will wiped off. Okay. Now what they can do is they can go and edit the customizing and they can add their own attributes Y1 and Y2. Okay. And this they did under the same customizing. Okay. Now the thing is that their timelines is 31st March 25. Okay. So now, because team A changes are their production deployment, their go live is 31st December because they did this enhancement long back sometime in October itself and they completed all their testing and everything. Now they are going to deploy that in the production on this date. By that time, so team B, they just added that attributes there, but they haven't tested anything. Okay. So now at this situation, if they deploy the transport in the production, team A, all these changes will be deployed in the production. That means there is a dependency. Basically, without testing your team B changes, they are already moving there because there is a dependency and they have to deploy that on 31st December. So they already deployed. Team B changes also went to the production without testing. Is this right expected behavior, or do you see is the right approach?
No, it's not right approach.
So if there is an option, whereas if you go for an enhancement, right? If they go for an enhancement technique, what happens is this team A can create one enhancement one, ENH1, and they can add these attributes. Now parallelly, team B can create another enhancement ENH2 and they can capture in a different tier and these changes will be in another enhancement. Now when team A, they deploy their transport, only your enhancement one will get deployed in the production. Team B can deploy their transport in sometime later. Okay. So which means basically when multiple teams are working on the same object, you need to think through that. Okay, is there any way I can separate the changes? So that way you are unlocking each other. So there is no dependency across the teams. So that's where your enhancement, that is the only one major strong reason for the enhancement, where you can go for an enhancement and create. But if there are only one team is working and you don't see that kind of dependencies, it doesn't matter. You can customer functional also can create a customizing. They can play around with that UI and they can deploy the changes. But whereas when multiple teams are working, think through this and go for an enhancement. So from my side, we personally always strongly recommend, irrespective of the situation, we'll try to go for an enhancement only. That is the only one difference between, because having multiple enhancements for the same object always gives that flexibility.
So for example, yeah. Yes, you're right. Okay, fine. So we did for customizing. Okay, same like for example in the UIBB. So other one trying to create a enhancement, it will be originally will copied a master one, or it will be already customized UI. Like for example, we created a product.
Both are different. So
that's what.
Yeah, both are different. So other option is one can create customizing, other one can create enhancement. That is also possible. If there is already customizing is already there, assume that, because team A didn't think through this kind of, they don't have that much of future thinking process, and they went ahead directly with the customizing. Now, as a team B, when you are working on that one, you see that already someone is already created a customizing. So better not to touch that customizing. Let's create our own enhancement and keep it in a separate transport, and you go ahead as per your delivery timeline. Okay, because if someone deletes that customizing, all the team changes will get wiped off. That's another big challenge. Later, team A decided, okay, hey, these changes are not required. Let's delete this one. And if your changes are also there, that also will go away. So always try to keep the changes, especially when you are working on bigger organizations where they have multiple teams they are working. So it's better to keep that changes separate. That's the only one advantage with enhancement. And with respect to your upgrades, both enhancement and customizing will be there. So there is nothing we need to worry.
Means when we are doing the enhancement, it will not copy the like already customized value. This will be copying from the standard only. That's the base way. Okay.
Yeah.
Based on the base way only, we need to modify our requirement.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Okay, fine. So now we discussed 1, 2, 3 options. Of course, even personalization also done. Okay. Now the next one, let's go to feeder class. Okay, or before feeder class, let's go to this particular body. Okay, so in this particular body, the name itself, it says, okay, you see field properties. Always wherever in MDG you come across field property terminology, that indicates that influencing this particular field of properties, that is like making it as a mandatory, hide, or the properties of that particular UIBB. Okay, so when we activate our data model as well, I'll go to this one. If you recollect that the system generated some structures, in the structures field property structure is there. This auto generated for every entity. Okay, in this structure, it has that for every field, there is you can see the field property settings. Okay, here, what type of properties that you can control, like you can make it as a mandatory or optional, read only. Okay, all these values. Okay, you can see all these values. Okay, so now in this particular body, most importantly, in this particular body, what are the things that you can control is you are based on certain, let's say, for example, on this UI, okay, I entered FERT material type, finished product. So the requirement is for all finished products, external material group should be mandatory. Okay, which means this external material group is mandatory only for finished products. When I select some semi-finished product or other material type, it should be optional. Okay, so this kind of dynamic depends on the data on the particular field. You are actually making some other fields either mandatory or hide or optional or read only. You are doing all that stuff. Okay, so here I'm not going to set the value of this one. This is not a derivation, but I wanted to control the field, the behavior of this particular field based on certain values. Okay, in that case, you can make use of this particular body. Okay, so we should know what are the cases, which option we need to choose. Adding any attributes or basically controlling the labels and everything, you can go for customizing or enhancement. But when it comes to playing around with the properties of that particular one, UIVB, you need to go for this baddie. Okay, so I'll show you where this baddie exists. So this baddie basically not available under UI modeling, but this baddie is SAP placed under this process modeling. Okay, under process modeling, under change request. Okay, so you see there is something called baddies under this one. You have this one, access to customer dependent field property settings. So click on this. So this is the same, the definition. USMD ACC field property. This is the definition of that particular baddie. Okay. Now let's implement this baddie and see how we can basically what is the input and how to change the values properties. So ZENH underscore. You all aware of how to implement a baddie, right? So I'm just not explaining much here. The field underscore property. Okay. Local object. I'm just implementing that baddie. You can do it from your SE18, SE11 as well. But what SAP has done is they, in the MDG IMG configuration itself, they added that node so that you no need to remember that baddie definition name. The IMPL underscore FLD underscore prop ZCL. This is a class ZCL underscore FLD underscore prop. Just I provided names to the enhancement implementation, baddie implementation, and the class. Okay. Now, when I click on OK, okay. Now this is something probably I wanted to highlight here. Okay. So in MDG, the good part is whenever you are implementing any baddie, in at least the MDG, SAP provided baddies for MDG, right? Every baddie comes up with some example implementation. That means now because we are new to this MDG, right? So this baddie, you know the purpose of this baddie, but what type of logic I need to write inside this particular baddie, you may not be aware of that one, right? So that's where this will help for the people like, let's say, for example, who are implementing this particular baddie, right? So they can refer some of the sample logic, that S-flight data model only. So they SAP inside this one, SAP provided some sample logic, how to make some attribute as mandatory and some attribute as optional. Okay. So for that one, you can always refer this particular class. Okay. This class is available as an example. Okay. You have two options here. Okay. One is you can copy this class name and open this class in a separate window to refer the logic. Go to SE24 and enter the class, get display. Okay, so there is a method here. Okay, so modify field properties is the important method. So here SAP already provided some sample logic and refer this logic so that similar kind of logic you can apply for your data model. So again, all the baddies that we are discussing in MDG are common baddies for all the objects. Okay, the same baddie gets triggered for your data model, for your BP data model, even for your S-flight, article master, custom data model. Okay, so these are the framework related baddies, not your object specific baddies. MDG baddies. So every baddie will get triggered for every object. So you need to add a proper filter criteria. I'll explain what is that filter criteria. Okay, so this is one option where you can refer that logic. Okay, but the other option is, okay, so the other option is select this particular class. So again, here you see there are two options. Empty class. When you say empty class, it doesn't copy anything, just it will create a blank Z class that I provided, right? ZCL underscore field property. So it will just simply create that class. Enhancement implementation, baddie implementation, and the simple class. If I click on this one. The other option is if I click on this copy sample class, it will create the same implementation, but inside that implementation, it will copy the logic, whatever the logic is there, right? Here, this logic, it will copy into your new implementation as well. Again, you can just refer that logic. So this is just like who will open this in a separate window and see the logic. Instead of that one, if I use copy sample class, okay, then what happens is the logic will also copy it into my class, my method as well. I can just use that as a reference there itself and delete that. Once I complete my coding, I can delete that the copied logic. Okay, you got the point, right? So now this is the implementation that we created. Now, as I mentioned, this particular baddie is a MDG framework body, and this get triggered for all the MDG objects. So for all MDG baddies are filter based baddies. Okay. Any idea what is filter based baddie? Can anyone tell what is that filter based baddie?
Yes, that particular implementation can only be called based on the filter values, like here
Exactly.
in our case, the data model.
Exactly. That's true. Okay. So now you see here what I'm trying to say. So in this is the baddie which I'm implementing. Okay. Now this same baddie get executed for all the objects, for for BP and everything. Now what happens is here, if you go to this filter values, okay. So let's look at what is the filters. Okay. You have that filters. These are the parameters. You can say if at all this baddie has to get executed for your for your module, you can say your data model as a filter criteria. Or within data model, you wanted to specify for a specific entity only it should get triggered, then you need to specify the entity as well. If it okay, or else you can specify change request type. Of course, we had to discuss the change request type concept, but this is also additional dimensions and additional parameters. Okay, so these are the parameters that provides. So you just always, whenever you're implementing any baddie in MDG, just ensure that you add a proper filter criteria. Now, what happens if you don't add this filter criteria? You implemented your own logic. Then someone is trying to create a material using the material CR or BP or some other object, right? Then what happens? This baddie will get executed for their scenarios as well. And if you don't hand that logic inside that, whatever the logic you have written, that will get executed. And if that is not handled properly, it will give a dump to them. So that's why ensure that you added a proper filter criteria. So this we will discuss again and again in workflows as well. We have 4 important baddies. So in replication also we have some baddies. So everywhere the concept remains same. Okay, always look at what is the filter criteria and accordingly add that filter criteria. Okay, so for now you can, let's say for example, you can click on this model, select this model, right? So here you can double click this and okay. So model is equal to, you can specify what is your data model. You can specify what is your data model. Okay, let's say for example, if we specify so you can specify is your data model. Like, I just put this as an example, but you can specify what is your model. Okay, or in fact, you can specify the entities as well. Now, once this filter is done, if you go to this class, so this is the class system created. Now here the important method is modify field properties. Okay, as I mentioned, the same logic also copied over here. Okay, now if you go to the signature section, the same filter criteria also get added as your input criteria as well. If you not maintained there as a filter criteria, here at least you just include something like this. See, in the sample logic they have written, if the data model is not equal to SF, S flight, just exit. That means execute this logic only for S flight data model. So that's what they have handled like this. Okay, so you can take a call whether you wanted to maintain the filters or have that logic inside this, but the same filter criteria also provide, it will come as the importing parameter to here. Okay, now here what is important to us here is basically 2 things. One is IT data and other one is CT field properties. IT data is nothing but for this particular entity, you entered material type as FERT, right? So this particular entity, so this baddie will get executed for entity by entity. Okay, so you have for data model, you have 10 entities. So you entered this material type and hit enter or something like that, right? So this will, because you did some changes to this basic data entity, the baddie will get triggered for your material entity. So whatever the data that is there on this UI, this entire data will come as an importing parameter, which means you can refer this data, but you cannot change this data. Here, the purpose of this particular baddie is not to modify the data. The purpose of this baddie is use the data, what is there on the UI. Based on that one, change your field properties, control your field properties. That's why this is a changing parameter, CT. You can use all these importing parameters as a conditions. But ultimately what you can do is you can just only change this field property. Now you see here in the DOM how they have written the sample logic. So first they are checking what is the data model and skipping this one. Okay. Now, if entity equal to, so in our case, let's say if it is material entity equal to entity name, that's why it is very important. We should cover the data model before reaching to the UI topic. Because when you are writing some logic and coding in UI and process modeling workflows somewhere, right? So we will talk in terms of the entities. So if you don't understand what is an entity, what is a data model, you cannot follow. So that's why we first covered data model. Now we are into UI modeling topic. Okay. So again, if entity equal to this one, they're looping this CT field properties. So what they are doing, if the carrier is LH, Lufthansa, if the carrier is airline is LH, only for LH, they wanted to control something. What they are doing is the currency code is a one parameter field is there. For that field, they are making it as a read only. Okay. Similarly, there is a URL parameter. They are making it as optional. So this is a constant. What is this constant? When you double click this one, it's a that read only means. So this is nothing but I showed you, right? Let me open the generated structure. So the field property generated structure. These are the values. So the values you have that one, right? What is that? R indicates output only, which means it's a read only. So this is the value you need to pass. So they hard coded. I mean, they added a constant over here. Okay. So likewise, you can refer. It's a very simple. Okay. So based on your entity, based on your conditions and all that stuff, right? You can actually play around with this. You can control the field properties. But the significance of this particular body is to control the display properties, field properties of any particular entity. Clear? I hope you all are with me.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's why for each different type of requirements, we use different options. To control the field property, someone asked me like, right, how to make it mandatory. So this is the place where you can make it mandatory. Okay, and you are adding the fields for that one. You can go with enhancement or customizing. Okay, so we discussed these things. Now, if this is clear, we can go with the other option. Okay, so the next one is feeder class enhancements. Okay, so this feeder class enhancement is basically we discussed about what is a feeder class. Okay, you will assign the feeder class to your UIBB, right? Where is it? Attributes, gender settings, feeder class. So for every UIBB, we assign a feeder class. Okay. Now, feeder class enhancement is there are, let's say, for example, the requirement is mostly, how do I put? Okay. So basically, let's say you do this F4. Okay. In F4, it is showing up all these values. Maybe you wanted to hide some of these values for certain cases. Okay. Or what are the F4 values that it is showing? You wanted to restrict that. You don't want it to show all, you wanted to show only very few. Or else you wanted to, let's say, for example, whenever you enter something, there is another field you wanted to fill the data over here. Okay. So basically here, what I'm saying is you wanted to control the data as well. Data or something, when you're showing something, you wanted to, when you enter this one, automatically this value should get populated or this value should get populated. Okay. Or else the same thing, the field property, field properties also, instead of that particular body, you wanted to feeder class is also another place that where you can do that one. Okay. So ultimately in feeder class, you can control the data, you can control the field properties, you can control the actions, everything. Okay. So because this is the closest one to your UIBB. Okay, so it is something like this. Let me, if at all, I have to show in a visualization part. This is your UIBB, which get displayed on the UI. The immediate for this one is your feeder class. Your body will be somewhere here. Okay.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
and your MDG configuration will be somewhere here. Okay. And your SPRO configuration will be somewhere here. So it's a step by step. By default, it reads from SPRO. Then your MDG configuration can influence. After that, you can influence through your body. And finally, this is the last place where you can further influence to display something on the UI. Okay. So the feeder class. Now, already the standard feeder classes are also there, already there. Okay. So the one which we discussed, right? For form UIBB, there is one generic feeder class, CL USMD form star. Let me check. CL USMD UIBB, not forms. CL USMD, if not FPM form, UIBB form. It's not CL, I think. MDG, right? Yeah. So that's what CL star MDG. Yeah, this is CL MDG BS GUIBB form. Okay. So this is the parent class. Now here, okay. So I'll show you the important methods. Okay. So the most important method here is the get data. Okay. So if I open this particular get data, look at the signature. So here you see here CS data. CS data means the same. So after all these things, the data will be handed out to feeder class, and feeder class has to pass the data to your UIBB. So that is available over here, CS data. Okay. Now in this particular CS data, you can again handle. You can validate something and you can throw as a error messages as well. You can validate the data that is coming from the CS data, and you can also throw that error messages over here. So these messages will be displayed on the your UI. Okay. And field usage. This is the same field properties bad thing only. Okay. If I double click this one, you will have for every field, whether it's a read only, mandatory, and all that stuff. You can control the label of that one. Okay. Visibility. Fixed values are nothing but I showed you that F4 values. You can, everything will be populated over here for every attribute. Name is nothing but your attribute name. For this attribute, what is the what about the read only and all fixed values, everything will be displayed over here. So you can also control this field properties as well here. Okay. And actions. So actions is nothing but when you add some button. Ideally we don't add these buttons and everything, but if you add any button, you can control that usage of which UI you have to call and all that stuff. But ultimately we use majorly for these two purposes. Okay. CS data and CT field usage. So here in you can actually, maybe usually what you can do is you can put a breakpoint over here. When you do something on your UI, right, it automatically the breakpoint will stop and you can see what values are coming up over here. Okay. So this now the thing is that here, because this is a standard feeder class which will be used across all the objects. Now if you try to do your enhancements under this particular feeder class, that will get impacted. That is not a recommended approach, not a best practice. So ideally what you should do, you should create a class, another class, and mention this feeder class as a parent class. So now automatically all the methods of that particular parent class will come over here. Now inside that each method, which method you wanted to override or modify, you can do that one. Okay. But this is how actually you can actually play around with the feeder class as well. But this is the last option that we always prefer. Why? Because SAP, to control your field properties, SAP provided a baddie. When this particular baddie is there, why I need to basically go for a feeder class enhancement? And again, to influence your data, right? That CS data, the values of your each field. For that one, we have something called derivation stopping. Okay, so SAP provided there also some baddies, which we will discuss under the data quality. So there you can control. So the SAP already provided the respective baddies for different activities. So after all these things, still you wanted to, because of certain things, you wanted to still handle something. Then the last option is go for a feeder class. In that case as well, you create a Z class, make it the standard class as a parent class, and do the changes. Okay, so this is about feeder class.
For all modules, the class will be the same for finance and BP.
Yeah, no,
Material.
yeah, that's where actually now if you look at Material Master, SAP created its own feeder class for Material Master. They are not using the standard feeder class, but this is somewhere in the hierarchy. The parent of this one is the one which we used. Okay, why SAP didn't use that one? Because they need to handle some logics inside this, that they don't wanted to write that logic in the standard feeder class. That's why they actually created their own feeder class and they written some logic. Likewise, if you open MM and BP and finance, they come up with SAP come up with their own feeder classes for each UIBB. So maybe if you are working on material master as well, don't directly do these changes. Here, create a Z class for this one, and through customizing or enhancement, replace this class with your Z class and write the logic inside the Z class.
So in that
Okay.
case, we have in the material master, we have like nearly a number of feeder classes are there. For
Yes,
exceptions, right?
you are right.
That will
You
be
go
an
exactly.
performance issue.
No,
And
there is no
performance
performance.
issue.
There is no performance issue. I mean, of course, you need to write the logic in such a way that it should not impact the performance.
Okay, so
So you know how to get into this. So find a feeder class for any UIVB, right? You can open that application, go to technical help. From there, go to application configuration, component configuration, select your UIBB, go to configure UIBB. From there, you can find under the general setting what is a feeder class. Okay, clear? Any questions? Because nowhere SAP say that, okay, this is also one of the option. Based on our SAP, what says is UI enhancements, this one, customizing and enhancement and CBA. That's it. Rest all based on from our experience, where our ABAP knowledge, using our ABAP knowledge, we come across the other options. Okay. So this is about the feeder class enhancement. Okay. Now I will stop this CBA because this is one of the important thing. I wanted to spend some time and explain this. But before that, let's discuss the other options as well. Okay, so this one baddie, right? This is obsolete. Though I mentioned over here, it is obsolete for when you are working on FPM OVP applications. This particular baddie is available. I'll show you where it is there in the UI modeling. In the UI modeling, there is a baddie. Yeah, this one. Okay. Don't use this particular baddie. USMD UI entity is this one. Yeah, USMD UI event 2. Okay, so this baddie this is obsolete. Okay, so don't use this particular one because this is not for our OVP application. Before OVP application, there is another application is there. Now actually that got obsolete. You don't find anywhere still, but SAP still kept that one. So don't focus on this one. This is unnecessary for us. Okay. But this is very, very important baddie. Okay. And feeder class enhancements also we discussed. Now there are two more options are there, which we wanted to discuss here is deep copy. First, deep copy. Okay. So what is this deep copy is? It is just look at your ABAP program. So there is some standard ABAP report is there, which shows some 10 fields. Now you have a requirement. Customer says that no, not these 10. Out of these 10, I don't need these 5 fields. I need only these 5 fields. Plus, I have my own 20 fields that you need to display on the ABAP report. So then what we do? We copy that standard ABAP report and adjust that logic in such a way that as per your business needs. So that is, you are creating one new Z program, ABAP program, and using that ABAP program is completely different, independent from the standard one, because you copied and you are not touching the standard one. In the same way, you can also do a deep copy, just like we did the template, right? The template we deep copied into Z. In the same way, I can also copy one of the existing standard any UI application. Let me show you that. In the UI modeling, go to manage UI configurations. Okay. I'll go to, let's say, for example, MM. In MM data model, the UI application that we are using here is close everything. So right click, technical help. The application name is PS MAT OVP 09. OVP means it's a overview only, overview page. Okay. Now let's identify this BS MAT OVP 09. Okay. So this is the UI application. Now I'll open this UI application. Okay. Here, go to the same component configuration. This is what your OVP application for material master. If you go to other functions, along with customizing and enhancement, you also have another option called deep copy. So this is as good as copying this application into some Z application. So when you click on deep copy, okay, now you see here, okay, so on the left hand side, the standard material master UI application that with all the standard UIBBs. Here you can see the component and interface view, all this. So this is the config ID. Each and every UIBB name is there here. Okay. Now on the target side, this system is copying into this namespace. Okay, its entire application configuration, that is nothing but your BSMAT OVP09 along with all the individual UIBBs also, it is copying into Z namespace. Okay, now in this one, if there are some customizing exist, because we created one customizing, you remember, for the material basic data. So that customizing, if customizing exists, that customizing also will get copied. If the enhancement exists, that enhancement also will get copied. Now okay, so that is, so where it for every UIBB, it will copy into Z version. Now, I don't want it, I want to use here, maybe in some case here, the standard UIBB only. Though in the Z also, for certain UIBBs, I wanted to use the standard UIBB only. Then you can untick, basically. When you untick, it will get wiped off. That means wiped off in the sense it will disappear, which means in the copied ZBS mat OVP01, you will have this application, this UIBB, MDG BS mat, this UIBB in here. The rest will be Z. So likewise, when you are doing a deep copy, you can do the deep copy of the entire application, or else a selected UIBBs also you can deep copy. When you do the selected UIBBs, the remaining UIBBs will be, it will have the standard UIBBs only. Okay. So now if you say, let's say for example, this one, it will come over here, and ultimately you can do a deep copy here, start deep copy. When you click on the start deep copy, it will create a brand new Z version of Z application, which is copied version of this one. So this deep copy is also another option for us. And once you do a deep copy, right, then after that you can play around with whatever the changes that you wanted to do, because everything is a Z version there. Clear? Is this option?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
So I have a doubt here. So
Yeah, please.
I want to create a new custom data model. We'll go for that option. So when we will go for this deep copy option?
Okay. So for deep copy option, now let's say for example, in your material master UI application, the customer has requirement like you, they wanted to add let's say in the standard material master UI application, you have how many, probably some 20 UIBBs. But the customer wants to use only 2-3 UIBBs, and rest all they have some their own UIBBs. They want to create own UIBB, in the sense they wanted to create some custom UIBBs and all that stuff. That means basically a lot of changes are required on the standard OVP application. Okay, and as I mentioned, there are multiple teams are working on that one, on the same data model, right? So if you're doing all these changes, multiple changes, too many changes in one application, that may impact others as well. Okay. In that case, instead of modifying the existing standard OVP application using customizing or enhancement mode, if I do a deep copy and I'll have my own version, and I will do all the changes that I need, so that I'm not touching the standard UI application. This is again applicable for like your material master BP. When you are creating your custom data model, there is no point, right? Because you don't have a standard object itself. So from where the deep copy point comes into picture, right? So you will create a brand new application there. That's how we created our own brand new application. But when it comes to MMBP or finance or standard objects, there is one UI application, and you need too many changes. So you have an option, still go ahead and do that using customizing or enhancement. Nothing stopping us from using the technique. Or the other, it's an alternate option. That's it. It's not mandatory to go for a deep copy. SAP provides multiple options to us. Clear?
Okay. So with this requirement can achieve like this as well as enhancement and customization.
Exactly.
Also.
Yes. Okay. Now, before deep copy, I want you to first think through that. What is the side effect, or what is the pros and cons? Okay. Now, one side, we all know that I can do customizing or enhancement. Using this technique, I can do all the changes, versus you have a deep copy option. Okay. Now, can someone tell me what is can you think of any pros and cons with this option? Both are possible to handle the requirement. Okay. I'll tell you one thing. Let's say, for example, there is a standard material master business partner UI application, which contains UIBB1, UIBB2, UIBB3. Okay. Now, you did the deep copy. So here you will have the same copy of the same application with ZUIBB1, ZUIBB2, ZUIBB3. Now both are same. Now when you go for upgrade, SAP released one latest support pack. As part of the support pack, the standard SAP and added some new UIBB4 to include some new functionality. They included some new functionality, new entities in the data model, and for that one, they created one new UIBB, right? Because you already deep copied, right? So this is a Z object. So when you go for an upgrade, system upgrade, this will be untouched, this program or this UI application. That means, what does that mean? After your upgrade, you still see the new changes in the standard, what SAP added, okay? But in your deep copied object, you don't see that UIBB, isn't it? Because during upgrade, SAP upgrades the standard objects. This is the standard BS, MAT, OVP 09, right? This is a standard object. So in this standard object, SAP adds new features. But this is a copied one. Consider it as a G object. It will ignore. Your upgrade will ignore this one. How does SAP knows that, okay, I need to add this UIBP4 as well here? No, right? So SAP simply ignore. You got the point? Okay. So that's why when you're going for a deep copy, we need to also think through that future upgrades, or else what you need to do is you need to again do a not a deep copy. You can add this UIBB component name. You can always add over here as a ZUIBB or the standard UIBB. That option is still there, but it's a manual activity. Every time you need to check whenever there is an upgrade, and you need to keep it in sync, which is additional effort. So when you're going for a deep copy, usually we always think through that, okay, even if I say I don't need all other things, because my business wants always these 3 UIBBs only, irrespective of no matter all the what standard is having, but my business only interested in those 3 only. I don't care even if the SAP adds new features, but I don't need for this one. But for other objects, I'll still use this UI application. Maybe certain material types I configure this UI application copied one. For some other application material types or other businesses, I will use the standard one only. Okay. So if your requirement is fixed and that doesn't change with respect to upgrades, then you can go for deep copy if you think through that. Or else always the recommended approach is go for always use the standard application and go for an enhancements or customizing only. This is the only one the difference I wanted to highlight. Okay. Okay, so I hope you got that point. Okay. So this is a deep copy. Now other one is modification. So this modification also I just kept it, but usually what does this modification, in SAP, right? The standard, if at all you wanted to do some modifications, that is nothing but you will open that program or that UI with the key, okay, that access key, and you can do all the changes. Even the standard components also, properties also, you can change it. Okay, that option is also there, but we don't prefer. That is strongly not recommended. But that is also one option where we can do a modification. But what is the disadvantage with this modification? When do you think this modification is helpful? And what is the disadvantage? Any guess? This is nothing new. Like, I mean, you think about your ABAP program or anything. So you there also you have an option to modify the program or modify the standard classes. So what is the advantage or disadvantage with that? Okay. So let me tell you that. So let's say, for example, there is some ABAP program. I'm just talking in general with respect to the modification, but the same concept applies here as well. Okay, for your FPM UI application as well. So this particular ABAP program has like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the standard one. Okay, up to 100 lines of code. Now, standard SAP has some bug. Okay, and for a specific set of data, when I run that program with that specific set of data corner case, it is dumping here. Okay, because of that data thing. Okay, now we raise a ticket to SAP. Okay, now SAP wants to reproduce this issue. They wanted to create this similar kind of situation in their system, and they basically take some time and they come up with a solution, probably after, depends on the priority, maybe after 1 day or 2 day, 3 day. So depends on that one, right? So, but now the thing is that in your business cannot wait until that SAP come up with that their fix, because it is impacting their production environment. There is a huge impact from the business standpoint. But as an ABAP developer, what is the fix that I wanted to do here. So in that case, exceptional case, what you can do is you can work with the basis and get that key, and you can do the corrections here, the fix you can here, so that this dump can be avoided. You directly modify in the standard program, right? Then it unlocks the business and business will continue, continuity will happen. Okay. Now later when SAP provides that fix, right? Now what you can do is you can revert your change and keep it as a standard, then apply that note. Okay. So with that one, let's say for example, if you forgot this SAP note, okay, SAP provided, but still because now there is no issue, and you move to some other project, you forgot this to apply this note. This your temporary fix through modification still exists in the system, right? Then after that, you went for some upgrade. So during upgrade, because it's a standard object, SAP will remove your code and replace with your code with the standard logic, the original logic. Assume that, right? That means again, when business start using that one, it can occur, the term can occur. So ideally, what we should do, as soon as SAP provides a fix, you replace that code and implement this node, or ensure that in a next upgrade, this node is already included and you won't get into that issue. So basically what I'm trying to say here is modifications, we go only for some emergency situations, temporary fix until SAP come up with a solution, right? So that's why we don't recommend this modification here. The same way you can open up the standard FPM applications or programs or anything, and you can do the changes as per your need. Okay. But this is the last option and we use only in the exceptional cases. So that's why I kept this option as well here. Clear? So with that, we discussed all the options when it comes to UI except this CBA. So we call it as a CBA, context-based adaptations. Okay.
Where we can use the modification option in MDG UI?
UI, you can directly edit that one, right? Let's say, for example, you have this UI application, directly edit and do the changes.
But normally it will not allow, right? Directly edit.
That's why it won't allow means, let's say, for example, there is some standard. Let me show you. Where is this? Okay. So this is the CL MDG BS UIBB form standard class. Okay. If I directly click on edit, it is allowing me here because this is the training system. But in reality, it will ask me further to enter a key, right? That key won't be available with you. Basis will provide that product key. So you need to open with the product key and then it will be in editable mode. So here, the same way here as well, ideally in your project systems, when you click on edit, it will ask for the key. Whether it asks for the key or not, ultimately the point is you need to directly edit without following any customizing or deep copy or enhancement, without following anything. Directly click on edit and do the changes, right? But after upgrade, during the upgrade, whatever you did directly using this option, that will get wiped off. Only if you follow customizing or enhancement, only those cases your changes will be retained. Okay. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
In case someone has done the modification, so and we want to revert it back to originals, like we have for customizing, we can delete the customizing, right? Is there anything which you can do for modification?
Modifications on the FPM UI level, at least that's a good question, basically, because it captures under a transport. But what change you have done under that one, it is very difficult to track. Okay. At least especially here. But when I say modification means here, what I mean to say, let's say, for example, there is a feeder class associated with this one. That feeder class has some issue. Okay. Now I can open that feeder class, the standard feeder class. I can edit it and I can do the changes. That is what in that case, it will capture under a transport and the transport has that which object it is, right? But when you modify on this particular UI, ideally we don't get we no need to do the modification on this level. I mean to say, when I say modifications for the UI enhancement, that is at the feeder class level or somewhere the logic that is written inside the feeder class that triggers some processes. So at the code level, I mean to say. But here as well, you can do the modification, but never ever try to do that because it will be very difficult what changes you have done, that you cannot track it. Okay. Any other questions? So we will come back to this UI enhancements because we have one scenario data model extension, right? So during that time, again, we'll extend the data model and we use this customizing or enhancement technique to add that field or UIBB. So that time again we'll come back. But since we are already discussing about the UI topic, so I just touch based all this the UI enhancements as well.